So two broad matters that you need to think about before and indeed as you're doing your research. The first one is, how do I undertake my research ethically? The second one is, how do I meet the requirements that either my country or my institution or my discipline require me to meet in order to get approval in order to do the research? So the first one would be asking questions like, well, what are the principles that should guide my research? And in Australia, we look to something called the National Statement on Ethical Conduct in Human Research, and a series of principles within that document around justice, around autonomy, around harm and benefit, around merit and integrity, that should guide the way in which we think about the ethics of our research. Another way of thinking about it is to work out why we're doing what we're doing, who we're doing it with, so who are the participants and who are the stakeholders. What's the purpose of our research? What's the benefit of our research? What are the costs? What are the harms, the potential harms associated with our research? It's those kinds of questions that we ought to work through, and sometimes the benefits would not justify the harms. Sometimes, as a result, we would need to expand the benefits and mitigate or remove the potential for some harms to occur in order to justify the research occurring. So that's the kinds of ethical questions that you might want to ask. Different countries have approached the regulation of the ethics of research in different ways. There's some countries where there's a single set of national guidelines that cover all disciplines. Australia and Canada are two examples of that. Most other countries have a set of national guidelines that at least cover health research. There's a second group of countries where they'll have that health research guidance, but they'll have separate guidelines that cover disciplines such as education. Brazil, Norway, United Kingdom all have separate guidelines to cover education. And then there's a third group of countries, and that's probably most of the rest of the world, where there really isn't national guidance on research in social sciences and social research in education. But there might be guidance or requirements at the institutional level, at the university level, that cover all non-health human research. And that might be the position that you find yourself in which case you're going to have to look at what are the forms, what are the processes, what are the policies that you need to adhere to in your own institution. I want to talk about two particular examples. One is China, and then the other is Australia. It's really difficult to locate China within that schema. Again, I'd invite you to read Yao Yang's article in Cultures of Science that came out in 2022 and see where you think that China fits within the schema. So China has a national and provincial research integrity management system. It has a national and provincial reporting system. But there really are still quite serious challenges for education around research integrity. Who's doing what? Who has responsibility for doing what? How detection occurs, how investigation occurs, and how once you've found misconduct, it might be responded to. So that's the Chinese example. I'm inviting you to see how it fits into that schema. Australia, I've already put within that schema. We have the Australian Code for Responsible Conduct of Research. It was developed by the funding councils together with the body that represents universities in Australia. It guides all researchers in universities in responsible practices. And its role is to promote integrity. It explains community expectations to researchers. It advises on how to address misconduct. And it creates a series of principles and responsibilities that researchers in those institutions and institutions are expected to follow.